Thanks for joining. The webinar will start shortly. Thanks for joining, everyone. We will kick off in just a couple of minutes. The webinar will start in 1 minute.
Okay, I'll leave that with you.
I accidentally sent it. Because she's not letting me.
So
Yeah.
the only thing I did.
Hi, Cathy. Welcome to the webinar. Thanks for joining us. We're about to kick off. I'd like to welcome Cathy Norton from OPC, who's going to do our introductions.
Thanks, Pete. Just before we get going, thank you to you all for joining us today. You should have an Uber Eats voucher in your inbox, so please do check for that if you haven't seen it there already. That's just as a little thank you to us from us for you joining us today. Alrighty, so good morning and welcome to our second webinar, which continues our conversation around measures you should be taking to reinforce your businesses against the ever-changing and intensifying cyber threat landscape. The last seminar we did, you heard from our MD Brett and Clinton, our Technical Services Director around cybersecurity. I'm Cathy and I'm the General Manager of OPC, and I've been looking after the financial, HR and admin sides of OPC forever, including our 3 ISO compliances and their associated procedures and policies. It's been a very challenging year in all of my governance areas, but it has taught me and our company more broadly a great deal about what's really important, and that's keeping those we love and the things that sustain us safe. More than ever, we've learned to be agile, resilient and prepared for anything, and not to take anything or anyone for granted. The resilience of our team was never more evident than when we, along with most of you, had to rapidly relocate to working from home after COVID struck. We seamlessly managed to not only transition our entire operations off-site safely and securely, but those of most of our customers as well. We moved to a cloud-based phone system that made the service desk seem like everyone was still at the office, when in fact, as you can see, we were all over Canberra. We learned new ways to work in rapid time and became frequent flyers with Teams, Zoom and SharePoint. So barely a blip for our customers, which was a really successful test of our systems. So heading back to today's topic, it is with protection and safety very much in mind that it's my great pleasure to introduce our data backup and disaster recovery webinar presenters. Firstly, Pete Eldon, who is Datto's Channel Development Manager. Now, we all know all of you have a backup strategy in place, and this webinar will explain why we've partnered with Datto to offer an even more resilient level of backup and business continuity risk mitigation. And secondly, my learned colleague and OPC's Chief Technology Officer, Justin Woods, who will follow on from Pete's presentation explaining the importance of our working with Datto. So just before I hand over to Pete, I'd just like to give you a quick snapshot of OPC for those who may not be familiar with us. We've been in operation in Canberra since 1985 as a family-owned and operated business. Our team of around 30 is made up of certified specialists in many IT disciplines, supported by a powerhouse account management and admin team. We have very strong roots here and very strong connections to our community, some of which you can see along the bottom of that slide there. I mentioned earlier about being agile and resilient, and that's certainly what's kept our business going over the last 35 years as we've journeyed through the many evolutions in IT. We were ahead of the curve in our MSP space by undertaking our ISO accreditations 18 months ago, especially where information security was concerned. And complementing our ISO is a range of critical industry partnerships and frameworks that Justin will talk about a little bit later on. These vastly improved policies and procedures give rigour to our organisation-wide service delivery, and that gives you the additional layer of reassurance that your data security is uppermost in our operations at all times. But even more important than the frameworks we implement are the partners that we choose to deliver our services to our clients. We don't make these decisions lightly, and we choose partners whose vision, priorities and customer experience focus align with our own. And so we're very pleased to be welcoming Datto to the OPC family. As you're about to hear, it's never been more important, as Datto says, to protect business data no matter where it lives. So without further ado, I will hand over to Pete.
Thank you, Cathy. I'll just turn that screen on. So thank you very much for that lovely introduction. It's we're very excited to be part of this webinar and also to be working with OPC and its customers. So we do appreciate your time, and as a bit of a gratitude, we're really pleased to offer the Uber Eats voucher in conjunction with OPC as a bit of a thank you. So this is me. My name is Peter Eldon. I'm the Channel Development Manager for Datto, and my role would traditionally be going around Australia and Pacific, talking to customers about the benefits and the need for a business continuity solution over a traditional backup. Unfortunately, because of 2020 just being a cracker, I've been stuck here in this office for quite a while. So we're doing these remotely, which has been really interesting to see the pivot out of that. But 2 pictures of me is way too much, so let's move right past that and we'll get onto it. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Datto, because at the end of the day, what we're asking, both OPC and for you guys to do is to trust us with your data. And so we need to show you that we're worthy of that trust. So from a couple of things is, we're a large US-based organization that has premises and presence in all the major continents. And from an Australian standpoint, we're in both Sydney and Melbourne from a data center standpoint, which means that all of our data that we're protecting for our customers, be it either on premise or in the cloud, all of that stays within the Australian sovereignty, which is obviously very important. We've got multiple offices around the world, as I said. We are 100% channel only, and what that means is that we only engage organizations like OPC, who then engage the end customers such as yourselves. And that is a really good relationship for us, because what it allows us to do is specialize in the business continuity component, but then have these experts, the MSPs, who really understand the customers, their needs and their wants and their solutions. And together, that's a fantastic partnership. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. We're a very technical business. So 70% of our staff are either building solutions or supporting solutions. And we have over 500 petabyte of data under our protection globally, and a significant presence in Sydney. We have in Australia with a Sydney head office with around 80 staff in there supporting OPC and the likes. So what I want to talk about today is really a wider conversation about what are the best practices to protect our data and where we fit in that. So when we look at the best practices, and you'll hear Justin and the team talk about this in a moment, but the 5 best practices are initially a firewall. And a firewall, for people who may not know, that this is something that protects your network from outside attack. And the best way I explain a firewall is it's kind of like a bouncer at a bar or a nightclub. And that bouncer is there to make sure whoever comes inside is allowed inside and addressed properly and are going to behave themselves. And that's very much what a firewall does. It stands at the entrance to your business and it checks out the shoes of the people coming in and makes sure those shoes are appropriate dress code. Then there's a spam filter. And a spam filter obviously is protecting the information that your emails that are coming in and making sure that there's not bad actors or dodgy connections or attachments in there. And if we were at a physical event, I would say to you guys now, whose spam filter is annoying and it sometimes it catches things that aren't spam. And everyone puts their hand up and I go, great, right? You want your spam filter to be a little annoying, because then if it's catching clean things, then it's certainly catching the bad things. And then server and endpoint antivirus. So, your laptops and your desktops, as well as your servers, you're running the next gen best antivirus that's available, and certainly the OPC guys certainly use that. And this is important, obviously, and we don't really need to explain what an antivirus is, but if we went back 5-6 years ago, then there was really conversations around why you needed a spam filter, why you needed a firewall, and why you needed AV. But these are really are a giving now, and most businesses would have that as standard. Now, this is an area of significant growth, and it's an area that can really help a business in building its business resilience and its business continuity. And you'll hear me talk about that a lot. So staff training is vital. Technology will only go so far of the way, but technology is not as good as a vigilant staff member who was looking at an email going, that's a bit weird. I'm just going to check to see what that is. And I encourage you to talk to OPC about what you can do around training, because it is vital in the protection of your data and then your customers' data. And then the final piece is a recent and easily recoverable copy of your data. And this is the most important part as far as we're concerned. It's also the one we do, coincidence or not. And the reason that what we believe is the most important is because the rest of the things here are preventative. They've got to work 100% of the time, but something will eventually go through. And that's why that easy to recover copy of your data is so important to the business. And when we talk to our partners like OPC, they agree with this. We survey these guys every year, and they say that all these points here on this journey up the mountain are very important. So antivirus, employee training, patch management, threat management, but that ability to easily and quickly go back to before the event, be it a physical event or a virtual event, is critical in allowing businesses to trade through an attack or a fire or whatever it is in that business. And I'm going to show you exactly what it is we do here. And this is about as technical as I'm going to get. So just bear with me and I'll show you what we're talking about here. So at Datto, what we do, working with our partners like OPC, is if you've got an on-premise, so if you've got servers in your premise right now that's you're using for CRM or invoicing or email or whatever it is, Datto put a device on your premises. And that Datto device talks to all your critical infrastructure. So your physical servers, your virtual servers, might also be important PCs and laptops. And what we do is we take a snapshot of those servers and hold that on that physical Datto device. We also use our own IP to send a copy of that data to our Datto cloud, which I said is in Sydney and in Melbourne. Now, from a DR scenario, that is best practice. Because what it is you've got 3 copies of your data, 2 on site, so 1 on here, and then 1 in the cloud. So 3 copies of your data, 2 on site, 1 off in the cloud. That's a really good DR scenario. But where Datto differentiates itself in the marketplace is in that physical device there, not only do we store a copy of that, but we also have redundant CPU and memory. And what that means is if you have a micro event on site where you lose that server, and that server could break, the motherboard might die, it might overheat, whatever it is. If that server dies, OPC can instantly virtualize that server on the Datto device. So what we can do is we can make that copy of that server that we're backing up every hour or whatever it is, we can make that run on the Datto device. So your staff would now be working from the Datto device unaware that there was actually a problem with that actual server. Then the OPC team can roll out Dell or whoever it is with a warranty job to fix that server in the background while your staff are still invoicing, checking information, doing whatever it is on your on-premise systems from the Datto device. While we're working from there, we're still backing up the rest of your environment, and we're still backing up the device on the Datto as well. When OPC fix that problem, we can actually use that Datto device to rebuild that server on the fly and then cut your staff back to the original production server. And that's what a business continuity solution is. So if you think about a disaster recovery solution where you have copies of your data, if that server crashes and dies, you can't use that whilst you're getting that fixed. So the motherboard gets fixed or whatever it is. But by having a business continuity solution, you can work on that server as if it's still live while it's fixed in the background. Now, let's say you're having a really bad day and it's not just one server you lose, but you lose that whole server room, including the Datto device. Now that could be, you've went away on a weekend and it's an incredibly hot weekend, your air conditioner breaks and all the servers melt. It could be someone just backed a truck or a ute into your data center and ran it over. I come up with all these terrible things that will happen to your business, so I do apologize for that. But it's train hard, fight easy, as they say. So Let's say we've had a scenario where we lose these servers and we lose the Datto device. The OPC team can virtualize whatever was on that Datto device in the Datto cloud and then deliver it to you via RDP or a VPN or something like that from wherever you are. So you could be sending everyone home to work remotely as we're doing currently. You could send everyone to a serviced office while you fixed whatever that big event was, what's happened to your premises, and it will still work and you'll still have the access to all your information. We would then send out a new Datto device when you're ready, and the OPC team can actually use that to actually build your environment back up and running. So again, no matter what the event, be it a physical or a virtual event, and no matter the size of that event, affecting one server or your entire server production servers, we can give you access to your data and you can trade through that without having an impact to selling or reputation. And all of this is backed up by 24-hour support. And this is really important because when people like OPC and our MSPs traditionally buy these systems, they buy software and hardware and they build a solution. And that means they very much have to support that themselves. But because we work with OPC to deliver effectively an outcome, which is access to your data, it means we've got a ton of support mechanisms that can support OPC in a major event. So if you can imagine there's a significant physical event to happen in your area, it's not just going to be you who are affected, but it's going to be multiple businesses around you. And possibly it could be OPC and their team as well that's affected. So by having the Datto support in the background, where we have this 24/7 team who are supporting customers through hurricanes in the US, through events in Australia, cyclones and fires and floods, it means that you've got the confidence of knowing no matter what the event, it's only affected you, it's affected OPC, or it's affected the whole of Australia. You've got the support mechanism to get you through that event and recover your data. Now, this is what the devices look like. They're not very sexy. They kind of look like servers, but the good thing to know about them is from a scalability, we go from 500 meg all the way up to 100 TB. So we've got significantly different sizing to meet everyone's needs and requirements. And what we're saying to businesses is we really need to rethink backup. So if we think about traditional disasters, these are the things we think about. And this is I'm actually in Queensland, and this is the Brisbane CBD a number of years ago with some significant floods we had. But these aren't this isn't the disaster, the type of disaster that's most likely to hit your business. When these things do, they're big and you need to have plans in place to recover from these. But the biggest issue to hit a business, or most likely to hit your business, and again, if we were in person, I'd get you to guess, but the biggest thing that's going to hit your business on a day-to-day, unfortunately, is your staff. And it's not your staff's fault. Your staff have to go online. They have to receive emails. They put in the required PDFs from Seek applications or whatever it is. But unfortunately, we live in a scenario now where we can't trust the information that's coming back into that business. And that's a very dangerous scenario where you've got staff trying to work and engage online, but then the risk of the data that comes through. And when we look at stats around human error connected to ransomware, and this is what we're talking about here. So humans accidentally doing something, and then nefarious organizations targeting your staff and trying to trick them to steal your data away. And when we look at human error and ransomware together, that's around 95% of all major incidents that are happening to businesses right now. Hardware failure, we're seeing less of that now. Hardware's getting better. Natural disasters, well, 2020 has been a cracker. We are seeing, unfortunately, a lot more of these types of events. And so making sure you have a plan that will affect or recover you from physical and virtual events, no matter what they are, is paramount for businesses. And this is an interesting slide. It's not an interesting slide now, but give me a second and we'll see if we can get it better. So the first crypto attack we saw in Australia was 2013. And it was a very basic attack. What would happen is you'd be working on your computer and everything would freeze up. and a big Australian Federal Police logo would appear on your screen. And it said down the bottom, you've been doing something illegal or immoral on your computer, and you're getting a $1,500 fine. And it's the internet, so 50% of people were doing something illegal or immoral on their computer. So a lot of people thought that checked out. But this scam was so basic in 2013, this Australian Federal Police fine was actually a money order you had to send to India. But it was amazing how many people actually did that because they'd never seen that before in their lives. They'd never had this attack happen. So what we say at Datto is anything before this date of 2013, we call BC, before crypto. Anything after that date, we call AC, after crypto. And BC, we're the only people in the world who use that. That's all ours. But this is a really important point. And if you only take one thing out of today's webinar, other than the Uber Eats voucher, what I would say is take this from it. If your backup strategies or technologies are designed or from around this date, then they're not designed to protect you after this date. Because everything we were thinking about from a backup and disaster recovery before this date was about a physical event. It was about hardware breaking. It was about power going out. No one was thinking about protecting businesses from nefarious organizations who are actively trying to steal our data away from us as we're on this call. And so this was a game changer. And so after this event, our strategies and our technologies have to change as well. And you know, it's important to say that the strategies that you've got in place right now were 100% correct at the time you did that. And you know, OPC are constantly reviewing technologies, threats, and responses to ensure that what they recommend to you guys and what they use in their product stack are best practice for not only the technology, but also the risk. And this is very much that change. And this is that process that we're going through where, you know, Justin and the team of visionaries are looking at this and going, well, you know what, we need to pivot and change our response to DR because of the new risk that we're now being faced. And this is what it looks like. So if you see one of these, you're having a bad day. And it's important to understand that these organizations, and I keep talking about criminal gangs and organizations, because they are that. These aren't fat kids sat in their mum's basements just playing around computer games. This is a highly profitable enterprise. And in some cases, it's enemy states. So we're in an unfortunate situation in Australia because we do see increased malware attacks compared to very much the rest of the world, is we've got bad actors, so people who are working for enemy states during the day, attacking Department of Defense and the government, and then at night are using that same technology to moonlight and attack small and medium businesses to try and use that for profit. And that's very scary from a business standpoint as to how do you protect yourself from weapons grade crypto? And the answer to that is obviously to partner with people, experts like OPC, who then understand the threat profile and are adjusting your technology and your strategies, be it preventative and recovery, to make sure you can get past these types of attacks. And, you know, these are, you know, they come in new and interesting ways. And these guys, and we'll talk a little bit about cloud backup as well in a minute, you know, around SaaS and 365 and G Suite, because these guys, they've got an R&D team. They're sitting around every, you know, beginning of each quarter, working out new markets and new ways to get revenue. And they're constantly coming up with new and interesting ways to attack businesses. There's an interesting one here. So I'll quickly show you this. So this one here is you get hit by crypto and then this appears on your screen. And it says you can recover your files the fast way, which is to pay them a Bitcoin, and they'll give you access to your files straight away. Or you can do it the nasty way, which is if you get 3 other people infected with this crypto, they'll give you your data back. So in effect, they're kind of running Amway for crypto, which is terrifying. You know, we're seeing more and more of these events that pop up. This is a really good quote. At least one employee will click on anything. And that's me, unfortunately, at Datto. I'm the person who does that, and they're constantly having to talk to me about that. And I like to just do a quick review of some recent events that have happened up and just kind of put these on. And I encourage you guys to jump on, depending on what industry you're in, and just have a look at the types of attacks that are happening there. And as I said, we'll talk about the ways we can recover from them. So, you know, there's stuff about healthcare we're seeing in there. There's some particular attacks around education and TAFEs with the military. And what's interesting is these bad actors, these bad organizations, if they want to attack the Australian government or Department of Defence, if they don't necessarily go and attack those guys, because those guys obviously are doing a fair bit of work in protecting their data. So what they'll do is they'll go and hit a contractor who supports a contractor who then contracts into Department of Defence. So they'll get the weakest link, they'll attack them, and then they'll go through and attack the major department that are actually after. But obviously, from a supplier or someone who's providing these larger federal departments, there's a major amount of litigation and compliance issues if you were to be used as an attack vehicle into these bigger departments. And so making sure you got best practices in prevention and recovery are critical in not only protecting your data, but also reducing your liability and who you deal with. Schools have been a particular area of attack recently, over 1,000 in 2019. And, you know, this is one that was brought down in the US literally on the day they went back to school. And when we look at the result of these attacks, and this is some surveys we did again with our partners, is the cost of recovering from a malware attack is 23 times more expensive than the ransom that they're requesting. And some people do pay the ransom, and you know, you might look at that and go, well, geez, 23 times more, maybe we should just pay the ransom. Well, a few things happen there if you do pay the ransom to get your data back. So number one, you're not actually guaranteed you're going to get your data back. You could pay them, and then funny enough, these guys aren't highly ethical, hence the industry they're in, and so they could then just hold you to ransom again and ask for more money. But let's say they do pay to give you your data back, because you know that is their business model. They do that. So you've told them three things if you pay a ransom. You've told them that you exist, because a lot of it is just spam, so they don't really know if they got someone unless you contact them. You've told them that your data is important to you, right? But more importantly, you've also told them that you got money. So if you are to pay a ransom, I can guarantee these guys will be back again to track you again. And you definitely have had a data breach, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, about what you need to do from reporting on that as well to the government. So what we see from a ransomware attacks is the cost to recover is increasing every year, and the length of time it takes to recover is now at an average of at least 3 to 4 days to get data back if it is available, which is obviously then has significant impact to that business. These are some of the businesses that recently have been affected and have had to report to the Data Breach Notification Act, which I'll tell you about a little bit in a moment. And because there's two areas, there's the protection of our data, and then there's also the compliance of the privacy. And this was quite an interesting one. This was a hospital in Melbourne last year. This was really a terrible story. They thought they had backups in place. Unfortunately, the bad guys came in, and as you see there, they think it was North Korea, and they attacked the business. They deleted the backups, which is they're not able to do in a Datto environment, and then they hit them with a $50,000 ransom to recover that information. This was a heart hospital, and it was affecting 15,000 patients. They had to actually put a hold on surgeries, and they're talking about it taking 2 full-time staff 2 years to try and recover this data back from this breach. So this was a significant impact in their revenue, but obviously also the reputation of that hospital as well. Now, I just want to tell you a little bit about this guy, because this is an interesting story, because this talks about the new and interesting ways that people are attacking data, and that sometimes is not actually for money. So this gentleman here, I don't know if anyone remembers, but this gentleman here about 2 years ago at Christmas, I don't know if anyone remembers, but accidentally a warning went out to the whole of Hawaii, the whole islands of Hawaii, saying that they were about to be blown up in a nuclear attack. Now, this gentleman here runs the department that is responsible for sending this information out. And this is a post prior to that attack from his social media. And it's just one of those social media posts where he's like, you know, I'm dead important. Look at all the clocks behind me. This is me working, right? And so he put that on his social media before this came through. And then this is what appeared to everyone on their phones in Hawaii the day of the attack. Now, I know this because I was in Hawaii when this happened, and this is actually from my phone at 8 o'clock on a Saturday. And as it says, is emergency alert, ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii, seek immediate shelter, this is not a drill. Now, I was on the toilet when this message came through, and might I tell you, that is the best place to be when that message hits your phone. Now, it took 40 minutes for us to be told that this was an accident and that there was no attack. But let's just go back to this gentleman here. So again, if we were live, I would say to you, can anyone tell me what's wrong with this picture he put to his social media? I'll give you a second and then I'll show you. So this is his social media that he put up before the attack. And on his screen is his password and his username. Now, the American government won't tell why we got this message through to our phone, but this gentleman doesn't work there again. And this is a good example of how the bad guys are using social engineering to attack businesses as well. So they use technology, but they also use our own information against us. And in this particular case, it was just to scare the proverbial out of everyone in Hawaii. And believe me, they did that. But it could also be sourcing information from your Facebook and your LinkedIn to understand when your staff are on leave, and then come up with a scam about sending money across to another business. And this is where, again, a good example of where technology will only go so far of the way, and then training in conjunction with technology is very important in protecting your data and your customers' privacy. And very quickly, this, if you guys aren't aware of it, this is the Notifiable Data Breach Act. This is a part of the Privacy Act that the government brought in February of 2018. And what it basically says is when a business is attacked and loses data, there is a framework on how they need to report that to both the government and also their customers who may have had their data breached. And then there are fines and penalties in place for both individuals and businesses if they don't take reasonable steps to protect their data. And what are reasonable steps? Well, they're those best practices, you know, the firewall, the antivirus, the training, and very importantly, that backup and recovery, as we discuss. And I encourage you to jump on the site and have a look at this, because it gives you some real live stats as to the styles of attacks. And it will also show you this broken down to industry sectors as well. So if you're in a particular vertical, it will tell you what your threat profile is and what to be aware of. But what this does is it amplifies what we're saying, which is malicious attack and human error are the majority of areas that you're going to have a business interruption to your business. You know, we see cyber incident as a significant area. That social engineering impersonation is on the rise. That is a significant area of attack. And that's a dangerous area of attack, because if you look at a cyber incident, that's probably an email. And so that's a software running in the background trying to encrypt your files. But on a social engineering, that's then going to be a human who comes in. And humans can be sneaky, right? They can go in and they'll find your backups and they'll delete it. And this is why it's important to be working with partners who, every time the bad guys zig, we zag, to make sure that whatever they do in this arms race, which is what we're in, we're constantly responding to new threats and adding that to your solution to keep you protected. Now, we've talking about on-premise, so when you've got servers in your office or in a data center, but let's quickly talk a little bit about cloud protection. So what we're talking about here is backing up and protecting your Office 365 and your G Suite instances. And I'm sure a number of you are sitting there going, well, hang on a second, why do you need to back it up? It's in the cloud, right? It's protected. Well, no, it's not. So the way that the vendors work, be it Microsoft or be it Google, when you put your data into 365, you put it there under a mutual obligation responsibility. And what that basically says is Microsoft have got some things they need to do, and then you as the data owner have got some things you need to do. And we look at them here now. So Microsoft say, basically they will give you access to the cloud. So they'll make sure that Office 365 is working. They'll make sure that the hardware works. They'll make sure they've got power, and they'll make sure they don't build it in a major fire area. So that works. However, you as the customer has got to make sure that you protect the data that's held within the cloud. So they give you access, but the data is yours and you need to protect that. And what do you need to protect it from? Well, human error, like fat fingers, like I do it all the time. Problems with upgrades, and then malicious insiders. And we see a lot of this. So this could be someone who's trying to cover their tracks from a fraud. And, you know, I saw one in Townsville a number of years ago where a receptionist was changing invoices after they came in and had stolen $60,000 from the business. And the police actually forensically used the backup, the cloud backup, to go back and look at previous versions of that to actually prove that theft. But areas of significant increase as well is what is external hackers and malware attacks. So as I said earlier, these nefarious organizations, they're spending a lot of time looking at what you're doing next. They're looking at, okay, you're moving to the cloud. Well, we need to move our attacks to the cloud. And so they're building attack profiles and attack software that targets Office 365 and G Suite and then holds that to ransom to you as well. And if we look at Microsoft terms and conditions, I don't know about you guys, but one of my favorite things in the world is reading terms and conditions. I think this is page 7,984 on the Office 365. Justin will be able to confirm that in a minute. But what they say is Microsoft has no liability for the deletion of the data held within there. And G Suite says something very similar. So basically what they're saying is if someone goes in and steals your data or encrypts it, it's really your responsibility, and you should have a third copy or a copy of your data outside of Microsoft's tenancy. And that's what we do. We copy the data every 8 hours. So 3 times a day, we take a snapshot of that entire Office suite, you know, your mail, your OneDrive, your SharePoint, everything. And we hold that offsite. So in the event of an attack or an accident, the OPC team can immediately recover that and give you access to that data on the fly. And, you know, this is a real issue. We see 1 in 3 data have experienced data loss in the cloud. Now, I'm going to bring in Justin here to talk a little bit about the strategies that are also included with bundling that with our technology. But I would also like to say that the OPC team have been working with Datto in the background here to put forward a best practices strategy and technology for the protection of your data. I'm very excited that OPC are coming on as with us to roll out this strategy. And they've got a very impressive offer that they've negotiated with Datto on behalf of their customers. And so you will see your account managers reach out to you. It is a time-dependent offer, so I believe they've got a very good entry offer before the end of September. I won't go into that now, but the team will come to you and talk about that. And I do encourage you to have a listen to what that offer is and as to how that will protect your data. And if you need any more information, we're more than happy to provide that from a demo standpoint as well. But with that, you're sick of listening to me, so I'm going to hand over to Justin, and he's going to take us through his area. So let me just pass over to you, Justin. So you now should have control, Justin, and I'll stay on here, and you let me know where you need me involved. But welcome, Justin, and thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you, Pete. There was some really great information you shared with us. Now, for those who don't know me, my name is Justin, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at OPC IT. I've been with the business for around 4 years, and it's my 15th year in the industry. So let's get into it. Sorry, Pete, I can't seem to change slides. Apologies, everyone. Ooh. All right. So firstly, I'd like to cover a number of partnerships and certifications OPC has obtained. We are a partner of the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, and we follow the NIST and Essential 8 frameworks, which I'll touch on a bit later in the next slide. And as Cathy mentioned, we are also ISO certified in several areas, which is not very common in our industry. And more recently, we have created a strong partnership with Datto on the back of OPC's broader shift in ICT security. Now, if we go to the next slide, the main cybersecurity framework we use at OPC is NIST, which was developed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Now, at a high level, it consists of 5 functional areas, which I will quickly run through for you. First, we have identify. Organizations must develop an understanding of their environment to manage cybersecurity risk. Next, we have protect. Ensure that the appropriate safeguards are in place to limit the impact of a potential cybersecurity event. Detect. Have the appropriate measures in place to quickly identify cybersecurity events. Respond. Organizations must have the ability to contain the impact of an event. And finally, which is most relevant for today, is recover. You must develop and implement the capability to restore data and systems that have been impaired by disaster. Now, the recover function includes developing and maintaining the capability you need to recover from a disaster. This includes things like having a business continuity plan in place to ensure that the impact of a disaster is greatly reduced. Now, where to from here? Because every IT environment is different, a tailored solution is required to ensure that a backup solution is in place that meets your individual requirements, a business continuity plan is in place and tested regularly, and also define things like how quickly or far back you need to recover your data from in a disaster. Now, quickly go over RPOs and RTOs. Now, RPOs and RTOs are recovery point objectives and recovery time objectives. As you can see in the slide, how a disaster is hit. Now, how far back is acceptable to lose your data for your business? Is it 1 hour, 1 week, 1 month? For example, and what is the acceptable duration of time that your systems can be offline for? Now, both RTO and RPO can be influenced by things like legal obligations or financial risks, to name a few. So it is extremely important to understand your requirements so you know what to expect if a disaster hits. Now, this next slide will be pretty familiar to you all. We've dealt with the fires, giant hailstones in Canberra, and now COVID-19. Now, what is BCP planning? Business continuity planning is the process a company undergoes to create a prevention and recovery plan to be used in the event of a disaster. It is designed to protect employees and assets and make sure that you can function quickly when a disaster occurs. I'll mention this a few times, but BCPs need to be tested regularly to ensure that there is no introduced weakness that can be identified and corrected. So you might be thinking, what goes into a BCP? When creating or modifying a BCP, you need to cover several areas such as roles, responsibilities, and tasks for a range of incidents that could affect your business. A BCP will help you to identify and reduce risk where possible, prepare your business for risks that you cannot control, respond and recover if an incident recurs, and you must also rehearse, maintain, and review your BCP. You don't want to have a disaster and then realize your BCP isn't fit for purpose. Now, I thought I'd move into a Q&A with Pete on a couple of questions that should relate to a lot of the listeners on this webinar. Now, Pete, I know you've already gone over this, but most of our listeners likely have an on-site and off-site backup in place. How is Datto different?
So the difference really is around that business continuity play is, when we look at, as we talked about earlier, about the backups were all we needed really when we were just looking at these major physical events. That might be a 1 in 100 flood or something like that. But as that changes now, that we're really moving our conversation around from backup and DR to business continuity and business resilience. And so it's that ability for a business to understand the safety that no matter what the event, you've got a plan in place and a technology that allows you to trade through that and keep reputational limits down, but more importantly, still be able to trade and push out invoices and the likes.
Yeah, totally agree. So just through experience, I've definitely seen businesses have, a backup, but a lot of businesses lack the ability to spin those backups up on infrastructure.
And I think a lot of that is, Justin, is, it's sometimes there'll be a knowledge gap as to what we've currently got, right? If, it's kind of like everyone goes, oh, I've got insurance. But then when that big crack of thunder goes above the head, they go, oh, am I covered for flood damage? And you only kind of think about it in the event. And, as you said in that previous plan is, it's very important to train hard, fight easy. Make sure you've got the systems in place. Make sure it's covering all your critical infrastructure as and then test that, right, prior to the event so that when there is an event, that muscle memory kicks in and you get through that smoothly.
Now, this next question, which I'm sure everyone is very interested in. So if you just go back one slide.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Yep. So the cost really comes down to each of your individual requirements and what that looks like. And Pete, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's fair to say that Datto is fairly priced competitively within that market segment. And for those who are covered with OPC's current backup solution, your account manager will follow up with you in the next couple of days just to discuss this.
You're 100% right. So I think there's a couple of things working in the customer's advantage here is the size of OPC and your importance to us means that you've negotiated some very competitive costings, particularly on entry. But also the OPC account managers and ourselves will be able to show is that the cost of not having a business continuity solution significantly outweighs the cost of the solution. And, if you look at the average downtime of a business on a backup is going to be between, 8 hours and 3 days. And you times that out by your invoicing, your staff costs, the building cost and all that, the cost of a solution pales in insignificance.
I think that special offer you mentioned earlier should really help in that area.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's the power of the size of your guys and that buying power really does help customers out on that.
Very good. So having a 3-2-1 backup strategy is extremely important. You touched on that. It's to ensure that you have multiple copies of your data to recover from in the event of a disaster. So for those who don't know, a 3-2-1 backup strategy ensures that you have 3 copies of your data on 2 different types of media and 1 offline copy, or offsite copy, I should say. Pete, what could this look like in a Datto deployment?
So there's a couple of ways we can skin this. So like if it's, and again, what OPC is obviously came to us is said, we want to protect data no matter where it lives. So we've got people who are in, on site or in a data center. We've also got people who are moving to 365 for all the productivity benefits we get out of that. And so, we don't want to give people a less backup by them being in the cloud. So, be it on premise, well, you've actually got 3 copies of your data, 2 on site, 1 off in a cloud, and then in a separate cloud. So we've actually added another layer there. And then the same thing with 365. You've got a copy in the tenancy, and then you've got 2 copies outside of that as well. But I guess the biggest confidence for a partner should be, is that, you're paying for an outcome, not for some software. And what that means is no matter what the event, the OPC and the Datto team are working on the recovery of that and the business continuity of the business, not just saying, okay, well, that particular hardware seems to be okay, or that bit of software seems fine, which can happen when you build a solution out of multiple different vendors into one.
Good points. Now, finally, the last question. Sorry, next slide, Pete.
That this was, sorry, I might have been too quick for you. Is this one or that one you'd like?
That one, yeah.
Oh,
Very
right.
good. So from the perspective of a client, Pete, I'd like you to run through a few scenarios where a client has a Cirrus on site with backups replicated to the Datto cloud and are also covered by the Office 365 SaaS backup. What would a recovery look like for each of these scenarios?
Yeah, really good question. So basically, let's go through those in scenarios. So let's say the first one is it's on premise, and if we think about that kind of technical drawing I had, you know, we've had an event, a server's died, right? Could just be the motherboard's blown out or something. Now, traditionally, that means it's down until it's fixed. What would happen is the staff would be trying to do something that doesn't work. They'd call into OPC as normal. And then the tech support, that first person who can see that, can see what's happened, can say, oh, geez, we've had a major incident here. This server's dead. Can now immediately recover that on the Datto. So they fire up that last snapshot, that last backup on the Datto, get your staff to, you know, just log back in, boom. Now they're up and running and they've been working on the Datto. Now that process is minutes. So from the time that person rings up to say, hey, there's a problem, to the time that tech has actually brought up the Datto and virtualized is minutes. And now those people are now working from that. In the background, they roll a truck, they get Dell out, whatever it is, they fix that in the background while everyone's still working. From a 365 standpoint, very similar. So, you know, a 365, let's look at a malware attack. So suddenly someone's had their 365 compromised, and there's a brilliant video, Justin, that we can send to you guys to send on that gives them a really good breakdown of there's a great hacker by the name of Kevin Mitnick. He's a legend in the industry. He now is a good guy and helps us kind of show threats. And he does a great video on how easy it is to build a 365 attack profile and how easy it is to hack people. And so what would happen there is they get hacked. They call you guys, go, oh, I've got this weird thing on my Office 365. You go, all right, and I see what's happening here. You would recover from a previous snapshot, which would be worst case 8 hours ago. They would then be using that instance. You would then clear out the crypto, recover, and have them operational again. But again, that is a minutes exercise as opposed to what would be a major impact to that business by trying to see, what do? Do you pay the ransom, or do you just move on and just forget everything in that mailbox and in that tenancy, which would have severe impact and also potentially would cause some privacy issues to people who are involved in those emails.
I think that there were some really good points you raised there, and from a client's perspective, it's good to know you're covered, but it's also good to know what to expect, like if a disaster does happen. So
yeah, very much. And the two conversations here are, you know, obviously there's the business resilience conversation, so our ability to trade through attacks or events, you know, and all you got to do is look at people like Toll, Lion Nathan, right? These are two major entities that have had significant malware attacks in the last few months. And they're really interesting businesses because, you know, they had a disaster recovery plan, right? They have people just focused on this, but it wasn't a business continuity plan. And so my argument would be, if it takes you 2 weeks to recover your data, you're still in a disaster, right? That's a disaster to your business. Even if you've got the data, if it takes you 2 weeks to get back up and running and be able to invoice customers and be able to trade, you know, particularly off the back of COVID, that's going to have some significant impact on businesses.
For sure. Now I think we'll open up the questions to all the listeners. So if you'd like to
see if there was any questions here. So I was remiss, and I do apologize, guys. There is Q&A, so please throw any or all questions into the Q&A for either myself, Justin, or Cathy, and we'll love to get to them. So apologies for not telling you about earlier. We do have. Oh, let me just share that again. So yeah, so any questions, guys? Please, please feel free to ask.
And if anyone has any questions they want to ask offline, feel free to get in touch with one of us or we'll get back to you.
And I just want to remind everyone as well about the Uber Eats vouchers. So thank you to OPC for that initiative. That will be either pop into your mailbox or if you haven't seen that, I'm sure the guys will get that very soon. I don't think we have any questions. So I'm just going to thank everyone else on the webinar, and I would like to thank them for inviting us, because it's been fantastic and we love to get out and talk about this stuff. Oh, I think we might have one. Let me just have a look. Okay, so Peter asks, great name, Peter, first off, brilliant name. If an employee leaves or deletes data, I may not know immediately how far. Now, this is a great question. So the question is, someone does something to my business and I don't find out immediately, how far back can we go? And this is a really good question, because it talks about your retention policies in your business. And what that means is exactly that. If let's say, you know, there's litigation or you're getting audited from 12 months ago, can you recover that data to show the auditors or to help defend yourself in that litigation? And this is what we call retention policy. And traditionally with normal backups, your retention policy can be 90 days. And what that means is, you know, you can get your data back for 90 days. But if it's 91 days, well, you're in trouble. We've lost that. Well, what we do is we offer a really innovative solution here, which basically says that, well, not basically, actually says that we keep your data for the life of your agreement. So however long you're a customer of OPCs and Dattos together, that means we've got your data from that very first snapshot we did initially. And that's really powerful, because what that means is you immediately got a compliance tick on that, right? And so if you think about from different verticals will have different retention policies. So for instance, education, there are some requirements to hold data for 40 years in relation to students. Now, you know, think that forward. How are you going to hold data for 40 years? You're going to hold in a shipping container somewhere, or you digitalized it? By having a Datto solution, that means that no matter what the event, no matter how long ago it was, we can recover that data for you and either recover that in the way of a malicious attack or provide that data for you for compliance or to help you defend in litigation. So a really good question, but you know what this solution does is it allows you to kind of set and forget. You know, while you're paying for this solution with OPC, that no matter what the event, you can recover data from the very start of that relationship and be able to present that as required. So excellent question, Peter. And I believe that is the only question we have. So again, I want to thank Cathy and for Justin and for the whole team at OPC for inviting us along. And I will hand over to you guys for any final comments.
Sorry, Pete, just before you finish up, can you just draw our lucky door prize?
I can. My memory is like a sieve, so I apologize, Emily. That's terrible of me. So there was a question or an answer that Justin gave around what is the best practice for retention levels on data. And so the question I'm going to ask, and we'll get you to throw it into the chat. The first person who answers this gets the lucky door prize. Emily, what is the lucky door prize?
Lucky door prize is a Datto prize pack.
Aren't we generous? That's good of us.
Thank you very much.
That's great. Well, it will be good. It will be a good door prize. So the question is, first person in the chat, how many backups should a business retain as best practice? 3. Sorry, terrible cough I've got there. I didn't shout 3 there for anyone. So who's in there? Let's have a look. First person in the chat, Helen. Helen with 3. Congratulations, Helen. You are a winner. There is a lucky door. So it's actually a door. We're actually sending a door out to you. So congratulations. No, we're not. We're going to send you a pack. So congratulations to Helen. Edith, you were just a second behind. For that reason, I'm going to get us to send you a pack out as well. So well done, Edith. You were just a second behind. So apologies, Emily. I dropped the ball on that one. A good job you were there. I'll hand over now to Cathy and Justin for any final words.
Thank you, Pete. Again, I'd like to thank Pete, yourself and Cathy for joining the webinar today. And of course, all the listeners for taking out the time in your day to watch this webinar. And yeah, I think, yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and your Uber Eats, whatever you decide to order.
Thanks,
Brilliant, guys.
everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone
Thanks,
have a
everyone.
fantastic day.
Bye-bye.